Hello dancers and welcome back to Dancers Feed. Today I'm doing something special. I am interviewing these three wonderful women next to me and we're going to be speaking about Bharatanatyam, an Indian classical dance. So before we begin, I just want to have these ladies introduce themselves. So Madhvi, can you start? Your
Sure.
name and where you learned Bharatanatyam from.
My name is Madhvi and I learned my Bharatanatyam from a state called Gujarat in India. My teacher is Mrs. Meha Thakur. I also learned my classical music with Mr. Bhailal Bhai Shah, and I still have my gurus that I continue to learn from. Mr. Vinod Naidu, he's in Mumbai, and
Okay. Wonderful, thank you.
yeah.
Gitali?
Hi, my name is Gitali Tampi. I am a mostly Bharatanatyam and Bollywood teacher, performer, and choreographer. I kind of have grown up learning dance through many different avenues, teachers, walks of life, but my Bharatanatyam guru, which is the main style I'm focusing on as a creator right now, is my guru Madhvi Mehta. And yeah, all the Bharatanatyam that I've really absorbed has been from her.
From her, okay.
And hi, I'm Anjali Tampi. I'm Gitali's sister. I am also a teacher and performer. I've also had a bunch of different areas where I've learned from growing up. And for Bharatanatyam, I've been learning from Madhvi Aunty.
Excellent. So I know very, very little about Bharatanatyam compared to these lovely women. I did used to dance with Anjali and Gitali years ago in a Bollywood Indian fusion company, but that was forever ago, and I am a little rusty on my moves. So what I would like is, Madhvi, can you explain what Bharatanatyam is? Where did it originate and the story behind it?
Sure. Bharatanatyam actually is a very ancient Indian dance form which originated in Tanjore district of Tamil Nadu. Because of its long history, it has gone through so many different, aspects, and it has its ups and downs, but it traces its root back to 2nd century CE.
Okay.
According to Tamil epic called Silapattikaram. Then you can also find evidence and sculptures in temples of India in 6th century, 7th century, all the way to 9th century CE.
Wow.
Also. It's also said and believed that it's a descendant of Devadasi culture. Now, Devdasi literally means that female servants of God. Dev is the God and Dasi is the servant, female servant. So, then during the British rule in India in 1900, it had, I think it was at its lowest where it was banned by British rule. Just because they could not differentiate between a dancer on the street dancing for some other reason versus dancer who was just devoted to dance in the temple for the god.
Oh, interesting. I didn't know that at all.
Yes.
Huh.
And I think it was banned in 1900, I think 1910. And then I have to mention, when it comes to Bharatanatyam history, there are two very significant names associated with the history. One is Mr. Krishna Iyer. He was a lawyer, but he was also a Bharatanatyam dancer. And when, when it was banned, what he did was he started the protest. And fighting against it, he actually was jailed. He was in jail, and even from inside the jail, he still kept fighting for
Wow.
it. There is another person, her name is Rukmani Devi, and she was not only a great dancer, but what she did is, and this is everywhere in the, if you read the scripts, if you read the literature, she removed some of the, for a lack of better word, I would say vulgar or not very appropriate moves out of Bharatanatyam. And then she refined it and revived it. And since we are here in US, I have to say that there was one dancer, her name was Esther Sherman, who was an American dancer who came to India. She moved to India to learn Bharatanatyam.
I've heard of her.
Yes. And she learned it for many years, and she actually changed her name to Ragini Devi. And she also joined the fight against the ban. So it has gone through so many different, stages of life.
Right.
And today we are here. It's one of the most popular art forms from India.
Yes, absolutely, and it's so gorgeous. Oh, I love Bharatanatyam. I was just able to see. I was fortunate enough to see Anjali and Gathali perform there at Arangetram, and we're going to speak about that next. And it's basically a graduation of a sort for the next step in Bharatanatyam, correct? Or maybe I might not explain it correctly. Maybe one of you could take that. What is an Arangetram?
Sure. So, in Tamil, Arangam means stage, and Etram means to rise or to climb. So, the word Arangetram itself literally means to rise to the stage or to climb onto the stage. And what an Arangetram really is it's kind of the guru's way of presenting her students to the public to show the level of training that they've achieved thus far. So it's kind of considered a Bharatanatyam dancer's first real performance, first real step as a Bharatanatyam dancer.
Like a debut.
Like a debut, basically. Like up until that point, traditionally, a Bharatanatyam dancer is just doing the training, learning the dances. They haven't actually performed yet. But Arangetram onwards, they continue their journey, but it's their first real performance. In America, it's a little different. Bharatanatyam dancers do perform before their Arangetram,
Right.
and only certain students actually, go on that journey to actually have an Arangetram, and you can still be a very accomplished Bharatanatyam dancer without actually having completed your Arangetram, but traditionally it was considered the debut.
Okay. All right, so Anjali, can you explain how long a dancer has to train in Bharatanatyam for prior to debuting themselves on stage in their Arangetram, and how many hours a week? What are the rehearsals like? I mean, you two, we're going to get to this question later, but they performed about 3 hours of choreography, and I mean, I've been dancing all my life, and I have had to memorize various genres of choreography for all one night, but never a 3 hour, performance. We're going to get to that in a little bit, but first, can you just explain, what entails an Arangetram, or how much rehearsal time goes into it, and how much you have to have, for how many years you have to perform, or practice, yes.
Yeah, so traditionally, students are generally training from 8 to 12 years before they begin that journey. In our case, it was a little bit different in that we've both been dancing for around 20 years. And we began with classical, but we took a slight detour in between. And then when we came to Adi, we trained straight for 3 years, focused. But we already had a very strong dance background before going into that. So for our case, it was a little different. But generally 8 to 12 years, a student has been dancing.
Wow. Okay.
And in terms of rehearsals, we started off pretty slow. We started off about once a week.
Okay.
And we went very steadily with the choreography. So we started with our first piece, it was around 3 years ago, and when we did our Arangetram this year. So we started learning steadily, and then as we kept going, we added on more pieces, added on more choreography, and our practices got longer. We went from 1 hour practices to 1.5 hour practices to 2 hour practices to however long it took to do, so the curriculum is called a Margam, so however long it took to get through the whole Margam, and practice that and learn more if we needed to. and then we would increase to 2 practices a week. We increased to, I believe for us it was, we would have one together and then one separate.
Oh, okay.
And then practices on our own. So as we got closer to the date, the number of practices increased.
So I have a question about this now that I'm listening to this. The toll on your bodies, all 3 of you. What? How?
What a question.
This nervous laugh. I love it. How? I just need to know, like, for the guru to teach, the stamina you need to do that. I know that you have about 4 students right now that you're training underneath you.
Yes.
So I cannot imagine that. And then the 2 of you. I mean, did you just go home and take an ice bath and like rub icy hot all over and just drink tea and just like pass out in
I
bed?
had a whole routine.
Oh, you had a routine? Oh my
whole
god, tell me
routine.
the routine.
All right, so, well, first of all, I've always had one knee problem. I've had arthritis in my left knee since maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Okay.
And then once I started my intense Bharatanatyam training, which I went ham on,
Right.
I ended up getting arthritis, tendonitis in both knees.
Oh, fun.
So yes,
Oh, no.
battle scars, gotta love
Yeah.
them. But I started going to physical therapy, and they gave me a lot of exercises to strengthen my knees. And so I would wake up every morning, roll out my quads, do like all my PT exercises. I would always take ibuprofen before class. We started taking arnica after class for soreness. Every time I had a meal, I would ice my knees. I have knee braces for every practice, and I also started knee taping along with the knee braces.
Oh, wow. Like triple effort.
Triple effort, everything I could.
Heating pads.
Heating before practice, icing after practice.
Right.
Full on Epsom salt soaks whenever I had the time. I wish I had more time for those, but those are great. And then doing my PT exercises again at night. So I would have this whole routine, especially when we got to like Arangetram, 2 months before the Arangetram, maybe even 1 month before, we were practicing every single day, which was a lot. And so I had to be on my game with my routine.
Absolutely.
So may I add something?
Please.
Usually traditionally in India, the way it happens, the Arangetram training comes much later. When kid or student starts, they are actually coming 3 times a week to the teacher. It's never once a week. In US, it's very different because kids have multiple activities that they do.
Right.
They cannot commit to one activity that much. It's a very long process. 8 years is a very long time. So usually in India, when you prepare a Bharatanatyam dancer, they build their strength along the way. So it is not as difficult as it seems when it comes to traditional training and the right way of preparing a child. Because child comes to you when he or she is, and Bharatanatyam is very well, accepted by male dancers too. So when they come to you, there is, first of all, they start with 3 times a week. There is a, exercise routine that every teacher follows. And then they've been doing this for 7, 8, 9 years. Their body is so trained where they don't feel it.
That is not as demanding.
It's not that bad when it's done in the right way.
Yeah.
But when you try to rush it, or not just rush it, but when there is a time constraint, it's different. So if done right, it's not a problem.
Right.
I'm not that young, but if I had to do, the position which is called a Ramandi for 2 hours, I'm okay to do that. My knees don't hurt because I have had the right way of training ever since I was a child.
Right. So just so you know, the position she's talking about, Aramandi, it's very similar to ballet's first position, demi-plie, but the difference is Aramandi is usually held there as a position, whereas a demi-plie is an actual movement where you go down and then you come back up. So imagine going down in plie and holding it there for how long did you say?
For the entire performance for the most part.
Yeah. So you could imagine the strength of these dancers and the, oh my gosh, it hurts my knees just thinking about it. But at the same time, now when I used to do a little bit of Bharatanatyam, because I wasn't trained, that's I think why it hurt. And also I was mixing in different genres too that kind of maybe might have contradicted certain muscle group. Well, that's more anatomy, but that makes total sense. Yeah, if it's a progression that way and they
it's
start
a gradual
young.
process. It's
Right.
not. Yes.
And I think also like growing up, when we started dancing, even stretching and warming up weren't things that were introduced to us. So like from the beginning, we've been dancing for 20 years. The first half of that maybe was without stretching or warming up,
Right.
which is really bad for your body as a
Yeah.
dancer. So I feel like that's probably why my body is so like just rebels against me a lot,
Right.
because it didn't have that proper like
Yeah.
introduction to dance from the beginning.
Yeah. Okay, so any tips that you had when you were going through this process for your body?
I pretty much followed the same routine. I didn't go to physical therapy before the Arangetram training. I didn't have real knee issues. My knees would pop every once in a while, but nothing too much. But then once we started doing the really intensive
Vigorous
training, then it started getting really bad. And I started following her routine.
She had a seasoned knee issue person to.
I had,
Right.
I live with someone who's been dealing with this. So I started doing all her stretches,
Right.
the icing, the heating, the arnica, the ibuprofen. So yeah, pretty much the same thing. I added a few of stretches on my own that kind of helped me. But just making sure that I stretched before class.
So most of the turmoil happened in the knee area, but in terms of stamina, do you feel ever like, oh my gosh, I'm done after this third hour, or I guess the passion kind of just drove you and you just continued, right?
Honestly, for me at least, stamina wasn't even something I really thought about. And I think Auntie also did a really good job of like the pace at which she taught us and like added new items on. I never felt like, oh my god, I can't do it anymore. Like, it always felt very doable stamina-wise.
Hi everyone, thank you so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed part 1 of the interview with my good friends Anjali and Gatali and their guru Madhuri. I had a blast filming this video with them, and I also learned so much more about Bharatanatyam that I did not know. So I hope you guys not only enjoyed it, but I also hope you learned a lot from it. I'm going to leave their social media links down below so you can contact them and even get to know them more and learn about their professional lives. Alright, with that being said, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye, dancers.